that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Happy to be with you. And this is going to be our final broadcast before we make the big change, the jump over to mojo50.com. That is going to be our new flagship. We'll still be on Monday nights. We'll be on an hour later. But same content, same host, same show. We're just moving our flagship. So we definitely look forward to seeing you there. We'll be putting out some more information both on Facebook and Twitter to make sure that those who are following know where to find us, find me. And we'll, of course, be continuing from there. Let's go ahead and get started today. The media faux war with Iran. What do I mean by that? We're getting a lot of fear-mongering on the part of the left and the media about what's going on in Iran, and it is laughable. Now, it all starts last year with this announcement.
The Iran deal is defective at its core. If we do nothing, we know exactly what will happen. In just a short period of time, the world's leading state sponsor of terror will be on the cusp of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapons. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
That was May 8th of 2018. President Donald Trump said the U.S. is leaving that deal, gave the reasons for it. It's not working. And everyone knew from the outset that it was not going to deter Iran from developing nuclear weapons. It wasn't. It couldn't. It was designed not to. So he went ahead and said, no, we're out. Now, of course, you got to remember this was not something that was just between the United States and Iran. There were other parties involved, France, Germany, the UK. I'm trying to remember if China was involved, and I cannot. And all of these people had these terrible reactions. You can't do this. You can't. Really? On the same day that Donald Trump made that announcement, CBS News had this report regarding Barack Obama and others' reaction to it.
Former President Obama says pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal is, quote, a serious mistake. In a statement, Mr. Obama said walking away from the JCPOA turns our back on America's closest allies and an agreement that our country's leading diplomats, scientists, and intelligence professionals negotiated. He continued, the consistent flouting of agreements that our country is a party to risk risks eroding America's credibility and puts us at odds with the world's major powers. President Trump made the announcement to withdraw earlier today. He called the Iran nuclear agreement a one-sided, horrible deal and accused Iran of being on the cusp of having nuclear weapons.
The United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. In a few moments, I will sign a presidential memorandum to begin reinstating U.S. nuclear sanctions on the Iranian regime. We will be instituting the highest level of economic sanction. Any nation that helps Iran in its quest for nuclear weapons could also be strongly sanctioned by the United States. America will not be held hostage to nuclear blackmail. We will not allow American cities to be threatened with destruction, and we will not allow a regime that chants death to America to gain access to the most deadly weapons on earth.
The president said allies are unified in preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but European allies have been urging the president to stay in the deal. The president of France tweeted after the announcement, France, Germany, and the UK regret the U.S. decision to leave the JCPOA. The nuclear non-proliferation regime is at stake. The president of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, also responded, slamming the decision. He claims Iran has followed the nuclear deal, but the U.S. never fulfilled its commitments.
Let's be clear about something. A lot of that is true. Iran did, for the most part, technically follow their end of the deal because the deal was written to favor them. The deal did not require them to cease from nuclear enrichment. It didn't. They could still have accelerators. They could still have a nuclear program. And after a few years, there would have been no restraints whatsoever on that program to do with whatever they pleased. So it's very easy to say that Iran lived up to the deal. The deal was not there to restrict them. It did not. As a matter of fact, the deal was basically, in my opinion, a way to legally funnel cash back into that regime while it slow-rolled its development of nuclear weapons. Do we not have we forgotten about the pallets of cash that the Obama administration delivered to Tehran? I don't know how you could. But Donald Trump made it really clear, I'm not going to allow somebody who chants death to America to develop nuclear weapons. I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to give them cash. I'm not going to help their economy. Matter of fact, I'm going to do everything I can because I can to keep someone like that from having the capability of threatening me. They chant death to America, chant death to Israel, death to Britain, death to everybody. And the only one who's not acting like a weak sister in this was the United States. Now, Israel never acts like a weak sister, but they were not party to this agreement. They were against it from the outset and remain against it. Donald Trump exits. France, Great Britain, Germany, we urge you not to stay in the deal. Let me ask you a question. Why do I care what France thinks? France has gotten its behind kicked in 2 world wars and is now going through a Muslim invasion in slow motion. Why do I give a rat's behind about what France thinks? Why do I care what Germany thinks? Germany instigated 2 world wars, lost them both, and they are going through a Muslim invasion and takeover themselves that is being aided by their outgoing Chancellor, Angela Merkel. Why am I looking at 2 nations that are going through Islamification, for lack of a better word, to tell me how to deal with the Islamic world leader in state-sponsored terrorism? Why would I want to hear from them? And now, of course, you have the UK. The UK, do you understand why there's a Britain First movement in the UK? Because they have given themselves over to Islam as well. So all these people who are saying, don't do anything to the nice Islamic country that sponsors terrorism around the region and some other places in the globe, don't hit them. These are the same places that are being overrun with Muslim immigrants. No, I'm really not trying to hear from them. I really don't think that they are the ones who to whom we should be speaking. Donald Trump reinstated the sanctions, and that was May of 2018. By October, it was really starting to hit, and hit hard, in Iran.
Iranians are bracing for a new round of U.S. sanctions that President Trump plans to impose as early as next week. Elizabeth Palmer tonight is in Iran's capital.
It's a day of mourning in Iran's religious calendar, and thousands of the devout joined a solemn procession in Tehran. There is not a soul in this crowd that hasn't already felt the bite of U.S. sanctions.
President Trump says he has no quarrel with the Iranian people, but at the moment, they're the ones who are already hurting.
Iran's currency has plunged 70% against the U.S. dollar, and that means everything is more expensive, including basics like food and medicine. Millions are now struggling. Sarah Abadan is one of them.
The price of everything is increasing. We can feel it easily.
What do you think about the current American government led by Mr. Trump?
I think they are awful.
The White House gets a lot of the blame, but not all of it. People rarely say it out loud, but demonstrations across the country show there's public fury with Iran's own inefficient, corrupt government. But for the poor, like many in this crowd, widespread violence and chaos will make their hardship worse. So for now, they're gritting their teeth and scraping by with less.
One of the main goals of the sanctions, according to the White House, is to pressure the Iranian government into negotiating a new and improved nuclear deal. Jeff?
Liz Palmer in Tehran, thank you.
Let me have my politically incorrect moment. I'm tired of women reporting the news. I'm tired of the female perspective in reporting the news. I don't care. Yes, the sanctions are supposed to hurt. Why do I give a rat's behind what the average Iranian thinks of the U.S. government when I have Iranians who are not even part of the U.S. government chanting death to America? I don't give a rat's behind what she thinks. And I don't need a woman telling me that. Now, that's not to say that if a man had been over there reporting it, as feminized as the media has become, we wouldn't have had the same sentiment. But I like the idea of what we used to have. Some of those who remember a show called Dragnet. Sergeant Joe Friday, Detective Sergeant Joe Friday, would always, when he was asking questions, particularly when he was talking to women, just the facts, ma'am. The facts are real simple. The Iranian deal has been exited. The nuclear deal has been exited by the United States. Sanctions have been imposed. It's hurting the Iranian economy in an effort to force them back to the negotiating table so that they would abandon their nuclear program in any way, shape, or form where it would threaten the United States, Israel, or any of their allies. Point blank, period. If it means the Iranian people suffer until the Iranian government gives in, that's fine. It could also mean that the Iranian people, tired of suffering, overthrow the Iranian government and then someone else gets to speak for them. That's also fine. But in the meantime, the same people who are chanting death to America and trying to make sure they have a nuclear program where they can actually carry that out are now under so much pressure that their people are starting to look at them cross-eyed. Sounds to me like Donald Trump made the right decision and is pursuing the right path. I do not care how much the enemies of America suffer so long as they are enemies. So much for my politically incorrect moment. Now, the government of Iran is not going to sit back and take this lying down. For those of you who do not understand Persians don't like being pushed around. They don't. It's not their deal. And it doesn't matter whether they're in a position of advantage or disadvantage. They do not appreciate being or even feeling as though they are bullied. Now, are they being bullied? Don't know, don't care. But back on the 17th of June, ABC ran this report about threats, if you will, from Iran in regards to what's been happening at the hands of the United States government.
We are also following breaking news just as we came on the air tonight. Word the U.S. is sending 1,000 additional troops to the Middle East amid these rising tensions with Iran. And tonight, the new threat from Iran. That country saying within 10 days it will exceed the limit of its uranium stockpile, violating the nuclear deal. That deal the U.S. had already pulled out of. And tonight, the Pentagon now claiming it has new evidence proving Iran was behind the attacks on 2 oil tankers. U.S. Central Command releasing new images of an Iranian Revolutionary Guard patrol boat near one of the tankers. So what does this all mean as the U.S. now sends these troops? ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz tonight with late reporting.
It is a threat that could unquestionably bring Iran and the U.S. closer to confrontation. Iran saying in 10 days it will violate the joint 2015 nuclear deal by exceeding the limits on nuclear fuel unless Europeans provide relief from crippling sanctions. But the U.S., which withdrew from the deal last year, fired back, calling Iran's threat nuclear blackmail, saying President Trump has made it clear that he will never allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons. Although the additional 1,000 forces the U.S. is sending are said to be for defensive purposes, largely reconnaissance and surveillance. And today, more images now declassified from that tanker attack in the Gulf of Oman, which officials say shows close up the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps removing an unexploded mine from one of the tankers. But thus far, no evidence has been released publicly of the Iranians placing the mines on the ships. The military also saying the Iranians attempted to shoot down a U.S. drone that was tracking one of the tankers, but the Iranian surface-to-air missile, they say, missed by nearly a mile.
Both the U.S. and Iran are thumping their chests. They're trying to show that they're tough enough if it comes to blows that they can take it. But neither wants to step across the line and actually have it come to a military conflict.
Another week of this. Martha with us again live tonight. And Martha, you reported there on these additional U.S. troops being sent. And tonight the Europeans saying that they need more evidence to convince them the Iranians were behind all this.
They do, David. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said the evidence against Iran in the attacks is unmistakable. But the European Union wants further investigation, David.
Martha Raddatz with us live tonight.
Stop right there for a minute. First of all, let's start at the comment they got from that so-called new military expert or whoever he was at the end. Both the Iran and the United States are thumping their chest. Iran has no chest to thump. Not if you're going to stand next to the United States. The United States could destroy Iran easily, and there would not be anything left. A war with Iran could be won without one American setting foot on Iranian soil. You could bomb the place into total submission and then bring in an occupying force as opposed to an invading force. If you do not understand that, if you honestly think that Iran and the U.S. are in any way, shape, or form on an equal standing in a military perspective, you are crazy. As for the Europeans, they're being appealed to because they're the weak sisters. But the United States has changed things in ways that we seem not to understand because it's not being reported. The United States is no longer an importer of energy. We are a net exporter of energy. So when we were dealing with all this with the Iranians before in the 1980s, in the 1990s, the 2000s, and through up to that point, we needed oil from that region in order to run our economy. We no longer do. Our economy is going gangbusters. It's by far the strongest and richest economy in the world, and it does not need energy from a foreign nation. As a matter of fact, Europe would do well to say, bump Persian oil, and let's go ahead and buy from the Americans. But see, the problem is the Europeans are not energy independent like the United States is, so they can be manipulated. And so even though the video evidence is there, oh, we need to see more. We keep acting. Let me tell you this. Don't act as though this is the first time Iran has done this. It may be the first time since millennials and younger than that know anything about it, because we don't teach history anymore. When we do teach history about America, we always teach it as with America being the bad guy. But what's going on in the Persian Gulf now with regard to Iran mining tankers and this, we've been here before. It was 1987 and 1988. And Donald Trump is doing little more than taking a page out of the playbook of Ronald Reagan. And let me ask you a question. How many of you remember that the U.S. had a war with Iran in 1987 and 1988? Oh, you didn't? You don't recall that? Why is that? Because it didn't happen. Is that because the U.S. took no military action against the state of Iran? Listen to this.
During the Iran-Iraq War, which provided the topic of last week's video, the U.S. became concerned about the war disrupting the flow of oil in the Persian Gulf and the negative effects that could have for the worldwide economy. When 1987, Iraq and Iran were attacking each other's oil tankers in the Persian Gulf. Kuwait, as its tankers were being attacked, asked the U.S. if their ships could fly the American flag. The U.S. military agreed, and Operation Earnest Will began, where Kuwaiti oil tankers were escorted by the U.S. Navy. Eventually, tensions would rise with the Iranians, resulting in the U.S.'s biggest surface engagement since World War II, Operation Praying Mantis. Earlier in 1987, a U.S. frigate, the USS Stark, had been hit by an Iraqi missile, demonstrating the need to calm down the conflict in the Persian Gulf. The Kuwaiti tanker that was flying the U.S. flag was hit by Iranian missiles in October. The U.S. responded by shelling Iranian oil rigs, and the convoys continued. On April 14, 1988, the USS Samuel B. Roberts hit a mine laid by the Iranians. The previous year, the U.S. Navy had detected the Iranians laying mines in the paths of their convoy. Now, with news of the Roberts, President Reagan ordered a retaliatory strike. On April 18th, the U.S. attack began. Similar to the operation in October, the attack started by targeting Iranian oil rigs in the Persian Gulf. Those on the rigs were told to evacuate. After they did so, the U.S. ships opened fire. Marine Cobra attack helicopters launched from an amphibious assault ship also participated in the attack.
The ball game is yours. Nice shoot.
An experienced return fire where one helicopter was lost. First, the Sasan oil platform was attacked, then the Siri platform was struck. At the Siri platform, an Iranian patrol boat opened fire on 3 U.S. ships bombarding the platform. Then Marines were launched onto the platforms for intelligence investigation and evacuation of those who remained on the platform. Meanwhile, the 3 U.S. ships were engaging the Iranian patrol boat and ended up sinking it. Anti-ship missiles would end up being found as well as small arms on the platforms. Then the Marines blew up the platforms completely. 2 Iranian fighters then attacked a U.S. ship, and they were chased off after the USS Wainwright fired missiles at them. Iranian speedboats then began a swarm attack on the Mubarak oil field, targeting a barge with 15 American troops. President Reagan then authorized the use of force against them, and an A-6 intruder dropped a cluster bomb onto the ships. At 3:30, the Iranian frigate Sahand came under coordinated attack by the U.S. fleet. Harpoon missiles from multiple ships were fired at the Sahand, and an A-6 intruder dropped a 500-pound bomb on it, disabling the warship. It was the first time the U.S. would destroy a ship using a Harpoon attack missile. In Washington, the decision was taken to calm down the battle, even as Iran continued to fire silkworm missiles at the USS Gary. The Navy then called off all attacks, and Operation Praying Mantis was over, with one half of the Iranian fleet completely destroyed. Later that summer, a U.S. ship would accidentally shoot down an Iranian airliner, and that combined with the fact that the U.S. had just destroyed half of their fleet, the Iranians gave in to a ceasefire with the Iraqis later in the summer. The merit of the operation is still debated to this day, even though it is absolutely a fact that it helped end the Iran-Iraq war.
So let's put this back in perspective. The Iranians did the same stuff back in 1987 and 1988 while they were involved in a war with Iraq. They were mining ships, putting mines on them, blowing them up, trying to disrupt the flow of oil. The United States sank half of the Iranian naval fleet and never declared war. There was no war. Half the Iranian naval fleet. Because Persians don't like to back down. I'm not saying that pejoratively. I'm saying that just as a matter of it. They don't like that. They don't like being treated or being shown as weak, and they don't take to it well, and they're just not going to do it. They would rather take that behind whooping. And they did. And if it comes to that, they will again. But the United States has no need to declare war to put this thing. And remember, back in 1987, 1988, the United States was one of the countries who depended upon the oil that flowed through the Persian Gulf. Now we do not need it. So all this saber rattling in the media about a potential war with Iran, based on what? If there was no war in Iran 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, if there was no war with Iran then, when they engaged in the same tactics and the U.S. needed the oil that came out of the Persian Gulf, and they lost half their navy in the process, what makes you think now that with an even weaker Iran economically now than then, with a stronger U.S. military now than then, and the U.S. having no need for Persian Gulf oil now, unlike the situation they were in then, that there is going to be a war with Iran perpetrated by the U.S. You are smoking crack if you think that. This is just the media lying and not, well, put it this way, and choosing not to report documented history of Operation Praying Mantis. Donald Trump is taking a page of the Reagan playbook, and the Reagan playbook was simply the United States is the most powerful nation on the planet. It can impose its will and should do so when that will is for the greater good. That's what's going to happen here. Donald Trump does not communicate in the same way as Ronald Reagan did, but in some ways, I find him more effective. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. And next week, we will be moving from TalkAmericaRadio.us, which has been our home for quite a while now, and moving to Mojo50.com, Mojo Radio 50, and there you will be able to find Black Man Thinkin'. Really excited about that. There'll be no significant changes, same host, same topics, a little bit different in time format, but still the same 2-hour show. And we will be starting an hour earlier on our first run broadcast. So instead of 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern, just back that up 1 hour, and we will be right there for you. So stay tuned, stay with us, and we will continue to work hard to give you the information that you've come to expect from this program and this broadcast. New topic. The abortion fight that we're now in, or at least it seems that we're in, the only reason it matters now is because the left is losing. And the interesting fact, and I've talked about this before, but they have been losing this fight for decades. Decades. So let me go ahead and play this here. This is from Bloomberg. They came out with this in July of 2016, and they talked about the reduction in the number of abortion clinics.
Since 2011, the number of abortion clinics that have shut their doors has skyrocketed. 162 abortion providers have either closed or stopped offering abortions. Just 21 have opened. Right now, there are 5 states where just 1 abortion clinic remains. So what's happened? Abortion opponents moved their battleground from the picket line to the State House, testing how far abortion rights could be limited without being overturned. And the Supreme Court provided one answer in June. So here's the situation. In 1973, the Supreme Court in its landmark Roe v. Wade case legalized abortion in all 50 states. Then, in 1992, the High Court laid the groundwork to undermine that ruling. It said states could pass restrictions that don't present a, quote, undue burden to women seeking an abortion. Since then, abortion opponents have been testing just what undue burden means, and they found that legislation with restrictions aimed at clinics have proved more potent than past measures aimed at patients, like blockading clinics or mandating waiting periods and parental notification. The state of Texas provides an excellent case study. It enacted a law forcing clinics to meet hospital-like surgical standards and required abortion doctors to have admitting privileges at local hospitals. That caused half of the state's clinics to shut down and threatened to close another 10 or so if the law had been fully implemented. But in a 5-3 ruling, the Supreme Court struck down that law, saying it imposed that undue burden we were talking about on a woman's constitutional right to an abortion. The ruling is likely to doom similar restrictions in other states. In fact, just 24 hours later, the High Court turned away appeals from Wisconsin and Mississippi to revive their doctor admitting privilege laws. Now here's the argument. So how do abortion clinic limits actually affect women? Well, almost half the 6.7 million pregnancies each year are unintended, and almost half of those end in abortion. One study concluded that if 31 states outlawed abortion tomorrow, the vast majority of women would still travel to states where it remained legal. However, the impact on women who can't or won't travel could result in a 15% drop in abortions nationally. There's also evidence that diminishing access results in more women resorting to dangerous and illegal means to avert motherhood.
Let me give you the takeaways from this that matter. First of all, you had to cut past the perspective that's pretty obvious in this. And more importantly, what they're overlooking. Abortion clinics are going the way of the dodo bird in America. There's a reason for that. That's because Americans don't like abortion. Period. You can pass all the laws. You can have all the Supreme Court. If the American people had no problem with abortion, then please explain why at the time, as of the time of that, back in July of 2016, there were 5 states in these United States that only had 1 abortion clinic in them. 1. North and South Dakota, West Virginia, Kentucky, Missouri, and according to this, there was actually only 1 in Louisiana as well, so that would have been 6 states. Then there's those with 2, 3. There are a bunch of states with less than 10. Of course, California had 145. Don't you get it? And this is interesting because I'm looking at an article from LifeSite News, which put a map together that showed how many clinics are in each state. 145. Now, they had 697 surgical and or chemical facilities that were abortion clinics or abortion facilities. 697, almost 700 at the end of 2018. 145 of those, more than 20% of them were in California. 87 of them were in New York. 57 in Florida. No one else even had 30. And a great majority had 20 or less, and a plurality had less than 10. If America was really as into abortion as the left and the media would say, or would imply that they are, why do so many states have so few abortion clinics? And the headline for this LifeSiteNews.com article, 40 abortion clinics closed in 2018, 79% of all abortion clinics that were open in 1991 have shut down. From 1991 to now, only 1 of every 5 clinics that was open in 1991 is still open today. You think that's because of legislation? You think that's because... How about this? When people don't like something, they tend to make sure it doesn't happen in their communities, in the same way that you have standalone or other facilities other than hospitals performing the majority of abortions. Why? Because hospitals don't want it said of them, who are committed to trying to preserve life and to improve health, that they kill children. They don't want that in their facilities, so put that someplace else. That attitude also exists in the general public. We don't want this type of stuff. We're not into that. We're not feeling it. And you may have gotten from this again, this what I thought was interesting. 6.7 million pregnancies in the U.S., half of them unintended, and half of those end in abortion. Wow. That's more than 1.5 million abortions every year. What does that tell you? And I know here's another politically incorrect moment. That tells me how sexually irresponsible women are. In this age where you can walk into into free clinics, not necessarily abortion clinics, but free health clinics all across this land and pick up effective contraceptive for free. If you get pregnant, how is that anyone's fault other than your own? Well, the man was involved. I said, yeah, but excuse me, you have all the means at your disposal to prevent pregnancy. And in 99% of the cases where the contraception is used as directed or properly, nobody gets pregnant. Nobody. And we know that abortion is not coming about as a result of rape and incest. The Alan Guttmacher Institute, which is a research arm of Planned Parenthood, effectively, has made it clear less than 1.5% of all abortions in the U.S. occur as a result of rape, incest, or complications threatening the health of the mother. So all these unintended pregnancies are because women just wanted to have sex and not deal with the consequences thereof. When men do that, they're called irresponsible. When women do that, why should they be called anything different? You really do not understand what abortion and the sexual revolution and all this stuff has done to the culture. You're trying to unfeminize women. You're trying to make them something other than what they were created to be. And in some ways, you're trying to make them men. And in all cases, you're trying to make sure that neither men nor women ever grow into adulthood, because parenting and the prospects of parenthood are part of no longer being pubescent. But I digress. Here's something else that talks to the attitude that Americans have on abortion. This was from NPR in 2017, right at the beginning of the current presidential administration, that indicate that the abortion rate had dropped significantly.
More than 4 decades after Roe v. Wade, abortion remains a major political issue, but the number of American women seeking abortions has steadily declined. A report out today shows the abortion rate recently fell to its lowest level since the landmark Supreme Court decision. NPR's Sarah McCammon has more.
The abortion rate hit its peak in the early 1980s, at more than 29 abortions per 1,000 women of childbearing age. In recent years, the rate has fallen to around half that. That's according to new data for 2014 released by the Guttmacher Institute, a research group that supports legalized abortion. It's the lowest level since 1973, the year abortion became legal nationwide. Lead author Rachel Jones is a research scientist with Guttmacher.
There is some evidence that at least in some states, decreased access to abortion is contributing to the decline in abortion.
Some states like Texas that have enacted new abortion restrictions have seen clinics close in recent years. Jones says their report found fewer clinics didn't always translate to fewer abortions, though. For example, the number of clinics went up in the Northeast, but the abortion rate in the region still went down.
So if you have abortion declining in states that aren't restrictive, this suggests that there's something else going on.
That something, she says, appears to be better access to contraception. For more than a decade, Jones notes, growing numbers of women have been using long-acting birth control options like IUDs, which are highly effective and last for years. The dropping abortion rate is drawing praise from both sides of the abortion debate, although for different reasons. Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards says it shows the importance of giving women access to better contraception.
There's just no way to overstate the difference that this has made in this country. And unlike other public health issues where we're really not sure how to solve them, this is a problem that we know the solution collectively.
As President-elect Donald Trump prepares to take office and Republicans in Congress vow to repeal the Affordable Care Act, Richards and other abortion rights advocates are gearing up for fights over reproductive health policy. Republicans have promised to make cutting federal funding for services provided by Planned Parenthood a top priority. For Chuck Donovan, president of the anti-abortion Charlotte Lozier Institute, a trend toward fewer abortions is good news.
By and large, this is encouraging for a country that obviously remains deeply discomfited and divided about the benefits of abortion to the public.
Anti-abortion advocates tend to de-emphasize contraception as a driver of the declining rate. Donovan thinks people's attitudes are turning against abortion. That's despite research by the Pew Center suggesting public opinion on the issue is largely stable. Rachel Jones with Guttmacher says it's not just that fewer women are choosing abortion.
Abortion is going down, and births aren't going up. And what we're seeing are fewer women getting pregnant in the first place.
Meanwhile, the Guttmacher report also found that in 2013, the total number of abortions nationwide fell below 1 million for the first time since 1974, a decline that continued the following year. Sarah McCammon, NPR News.
Can we cut through all that gobbledygook and just get to the chase? Abortion is not popular in America. It's not happening at the same rate, and it's been going down for decades. What does that tell you about the American attitude regarding abortion? Because now, don't get me wrong, there are pockets of the population and pockets of the nation where abortion is still loved. New York City, by blacks in New York City, where you have areas of New York City where more children are aborted than are born alive. And they said the rate had gone down, except in the black community, according to the Guttmacher Institute. Black non-Hispanic women have 27.1 abortions per 1,000 women. Compare that to white non-Hispanic women who have 10. 2.7 times more abortion for black women than for white women. I'm not going to make this a referendum on the absolute sexual and family immorality of the so-called black community. But it's right there in front of you. While the rest of the nation, including white people, are moving away from abortion, blacks aren't moving away from it anywhere near as quickly. You have to keep these trends in mind, and these are not trends that started when Donald Trump was elected. These are not trends that started at the beginning of the prior administration or going back to the Reagan days. These are trends that started not long after the Supreme Court made the horrific and unjustified decision to issue a ruling that is interpreted as legalizing killing children in the womb. It's been that long. This is a decades-long trend that America keeps showing we don't like killing children in the womb. Fast forward through all that to the 28th of May, when Missouri, a state that has only one abortion clinic, saw that abortion clinic and its ability to continue to operate threatened.
Today, the Supreme Court agreed to a compromise on a restrictive Indiana abortion law, upholding some portions while refusing to reinstate others. This suggests the justices are not eager to take up a challenge to Roe versus Wade. At the same time, several states are attempting to enact new restrictions on abortion. And as first reported on CBSN, Missouri may soon have no clinics providing abortions. Here's Janet Shamlian.
The only abortion clinic in Missouri may be forced to stop performing them Friday. Planned Parenthood says the state will likely not renew its license.
Banning abortion is not going to stop abortion, but it will stop safe, legal abortion.
It would mark the first time since the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision that a state would be without an abortion clinic. Jennifer Box used a clinic to terminate a previous pregnancy due to a genetic anomaly.
If something's wrong, I won't be able to do anything in the state we live in. And that feels awful in a way I don't really know how to articulate.
Brian Westbrook is an anti-abortion rights advocate.
So the way this was written, we can save lives immediately here in the state of Missouri with or without Roe versus Wade.
At least 15 states have enacted abortion restrictions or outright bans in 2019. 5 states have passed so-called heartbeat bills, forbidding abortion once a heartbeat is detected, as early as 6 weeks. Louisiana will likely pass its heartbeat bill tomorrow. John Milkovich is sponsoring it.
Where is the consideration for the woman? What about rape? What about cases of incest? There's no accommodation for that.
Actually, our belief is that if someone commits a sexual assault, the unborn baby has committed no crime.
The vote scheduled for tomorrow here at the Louisiana State Capitol, it is expected to pass. This state has a Democratic governor, and in a divide with other Democratic leaders, Governor John Bel Edwards says he will sign this legislation into law. Margaret?
Janet Shamlian, thank you.
The things that fascinate me is how do you make this about women? Women aren't the ones who are dying. Safe, legal abortion for whom? You act as though there are no deaths occurring as a result of this action. Is it safe for them? How come children only matter to the left if they are lucky enough to escape the womb of a leftist woman? Why is that? And all the tired meme like, well, you only care about the kid while it's in the womb. Once it gets out, once the child escapes the womb, the parents who created it have the same obligations as others to care for it, as my parents did for me, as I do for my children. I didn't ask anybody. I didn't sit there and go begging. I didn't do all that. I did my best to take care of my children because they were my children. Now, if you never wanted children in the first place, please explain to me why we should allow you to escape the consequences of your sexual immorality. That's all it is. Well, let me help you out. If you are having sex without allowing for the prospect of a child being born, if pregnancy occurs, that is immoral. That is a conspiracy to commit murder as far as I'm concerned. Because you can prevent the pregnancy. You can either not have sex or you can use any number of contraceptive methods that are effective that would prevent insemination and conception. If you choose not to do that, knowing what sex results in, and then you kill the child, that's a conspiracy as far as I'm concerned. And everybody involved is culpable. But Missouri, and you heard all the states that are now like, if all these states are moving in a direction opposing abortion, do you honestly believe that the American people are still in favor of abortion? Well, NPR talked about a poll. Yeah, good for them. You know, there's only one poll that matters in America. They're called ballots. They're called election results. And the result of elections in this country has now put abortion on the ropes. And when Ruth Bader Ginsburg kicks the bucket, because she will, the woman's old and sick, if Donald Trump remains president, and he puts another person on there who is likely to not be a fan of abortion, and now you have 6-3 or likely 6-3 split in favor of the child. Help me understand how you guys are going to try to spin this and get out of this. The American people are not fans of abortion. And the fight matters, and the fight has become so intense, and it's the primary topic in the Democrat Party primary campaign, because the left is losing and they can't afford to not have the abortion argument. They can't let it go, because let me ask you a question. If the Democrat Party walks away from the abortion plank, what do they have? Oh, we believe in free health care. The American people didn't blink when Obamacare was declared unconstitutional and gutted by the tax law that was recently passed. Didn't bat an eye. You don't have an issue there. We want free college. Hasn't happened yet. No, nothing on the horizon for it. The American people haven't batted an eye. You have no issues. Abortion is it. The Democrat Party has two issues: abortion and a visceral dislike of the current president. Without that, they have nothing. And oh, by the way, this past Friday, the court ruled that the state of Missouri could deny the only Planned Parenthood clinic and the only abortion providing clinic in Missouri. They did say, no, you can't have a license. There's an injunction that's going to keep things as the status quo for right now, but they've lost in court, and Missouri stands to be a state with 0 legal abortion clinics. As for the woman in the video, say, well, if something's wrong and I can't do this in my state, then you didn't move to a state where you can. I don't see the people who are enacting laws prohibiting abortion putting up fences at their borders, keeping women in them. If you want to commit an abortion, then cross state lines and go do it. We're just saying not here. But the left is losing this argument, and they've been losing this argument for decades. The problem is now you finally have an American, someone who actually thinks like an American instead of thinking like a politically correct agent, sitting in the White House, who is unavoidable by the political machinery at the federal level. Because it's already been at work at the state levels for decades. It's still a fight, and it still matters. But it matters more now because the left is losing. Missouri just saw its abortion clinic clock click to 0. It's a good thing. And if you disagree, your issue is not with me at all. Your issue is with everything that's involved in building and maintaining a viable, if not powerful, nation. Stanley, Levy. Oh, almost forgot. Getting ready to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards. And after that, we'll be back with hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
It seems as if straight people have become an oppressed majority. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, God made both male and female. He then ordained that men and women are to marry and raise strong families and teach their children the way that they should go. The result of doing so is a strong nation. As my dad often told me when I was growing up in Cleveland, that a nation is only as strong as her families. It is any wonder why the month of June, once known as the wedding month, and celebrating Father's Day has in many circles become a prideful month of celebrating an unnatural lifestyle whose proponents have bullied marriage between man and a woman into such a much less prominent position in society. And don't get me started on the war against fatherhood. The leftist attack against the family and fatherhood is part of a massive effort to destroy the Judeo-Christian and constitutional underpinnings of our blessed republic. We must no longer sit idly by like a scared, oppressed majority and push back against the darkness. After all, the republic we save may be our own. I'm Ron Edwards. Let's meet Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific on AmericaMatters.us, and 12 a.m. Sundays on Talk America Radio Network.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, want to remind you once again, starting next week, we are moving our flagship from TalkAmericaRadio.us over to Mojo50Radio.com. We will be changing all of our advertising. This does not affect the other affiliates, Talk 92.1, WDDQ, WJHC, Talk 107.5, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk. Doesn't affect them. It just affects the flagship. The show will be the same. We'll still run for 2 hours. We're still going to have the same content, same host. We're going to start an hour later, and I will update everyone on how to get hold of the podcasts. So we'll take care of that. And now let's get into this second hour. The campaign for the presidency in 2020 has now officially begun.
Tonight, I stand before you to officially launch my campaign for a second term as President of the United States. Thank you. I can promise you that I will never, ever let you down. I won't. And I am profoundly thankful to my family. I have a great family. Melania, Don, Ivanka, Eric, Tiffany, Baron, Lara, Jared, Robert, Marianne, Elizabeth, and my late brother, Fred Jr. Thank you.
It has been my honor to serve as First Lady of this incredible country for the past 2 years. And I'm excited to do it for 6 more. I'm proud of all that my husband, this administration, and our entire family have done on behalf of the American people in such a short time. He truly loves this country and will continue to work on your behalf as long as he can. All of us will.
If you want to shut down this rigged system once and for all, then show up November 3rd, that's your day, big day, and vote, vote, vote. We're going to have a big, big day. And remember, the only thing these corrupt politicians will understand is an earthquake at the ballot box. That's what they will understand, and they're going to see it. We did it once, and now we will do it again, and this time we're going to finish the job.
That was President Donald John Trump on the 18th of June announcing his re-election campaign in Orlando, Florida. Now, I have nothing against the state of Florida. I have nothing against Orlando, but I've been to Orlando, Florida. There really isn't that much there. aside from Walt Disney World. There really isn't all that much in Orlando. But Donald Trump was able to get, and he tweeted this out, over 100,000 ticket requests for his event. And he was putting it in an arena that held only a fraction of the number of tickets requested. Fascinating. Now, big event, big turnout, lots of people, lots of enthusiasm, or at least so it seemed, unless you were part of CBS News. They had a different take on the president's event.
Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett also attended the rally in Orlando. He spoke exclusively with the man running the president's re-election campaign, Brad Parscale. Major, is this rally a sign of things to come?
It is, on the positive and negative side. Let's talk about the negative side. This rally, this re-election launch, was overshadowed by a week of stories about leaked internal polling data showing the president trailing in many battleground states. Then the campaign essentially had to argue all public polling is irrelevant, and only the Trump campaign understands how popular Donald Trump is and what his path to re-election might be. That's a unique position to be in. On the positive side, these rallies, we're going to see at least 2 of them every month this year, many more as the campaign intensifies. And think of the rallies not just as a political event, but as a portable data mining operation. Everyone who RSVPs for a Trump rally becomes part of an ever-enlarging Trump data set. Already nearly 100 million potential voters. That, the campaign believes, is its technological advantage. I asked Brad Parscale about just that yesterday. As this campaign continues, do you win it with technology or do you win it with the president?
First of all, the president always wins it. My job is to get the last 0.1%. The voter that maybe didn't hear him, get a little bit more turnout up. You know, the president's going to win this. I've always said the president won the first election literally with his airplane and a cell phone, and a Twitter account. This time, though, we have to do some more mobilization. We have the power of incumbency, and this time I have the time and the opportunity and the money to try to give him from 0.1% to that 0.2%. And if I can do that, then I've done a good job.
Here's a point about last night's rally. True, a massive crowd, nearly capacity here in Orlando. But about an hour into that speech, we noticed something I hadn't seen very often before. Trump supporters leaving before the speech was over. After the speech, the rally site cleared out quickly, and there was not the kind of intense pro-Trump enthusiasm I'd seen at previous rallies for the duration of the event. That's something the Trump campaign is probably going to have to pay attention to.
That's interesting, Major. The president is facing 24 Democratic challengers at this point, Major, in his re-election bid. How does that impact the campaign strategy?
Parscale told me that it really doesn't matter who the Democrats nominate, that the party is lurching, in his words, so far left that the president can contrast not only his accomplishments, but the future Democratic agenda, whoever the nominee is, in such a way as to not only mobilize hardcore Trump supporters, but also attract independents and some Democrats. So the campaign right now is only looking at what it describes as this leftward movement of the Democratic Party. I asked Parscale, does Joe Biden offer a sort of moderating effect on that? He said, absolutely not. The party will pull Biden relentlessly to the left, and if Biden's the nominee, he said Trump can beat him in all of the states that matter most in 2020.
Major, got it. And can we just point out, you are not unusually short. Brad Parscale is very tall. He's like 6'8". I know Tony was pointing that out at the table.
He is all, Gail. Yes. He is all of 6'8".
Yes, I know. He is a very tall man.
That leaves me sort of doing a little bit of this. Yeah.
Yes, I thought that was a good observation on Tony's part. Major, thank you very much.
Very interesting to me. The take, and they're trying, of course, as the press does in this country, seeking to minimize anything that Trump does that could be seen as positive or giving the impression that a large number of Americans support him, which they do. Let's not forget he won the election. The idea that, first of all, this was overshadowed by news. So let me get this straight. Are you saying that none of the people who came to the rally, none of the people who requested tickets are aware of the news cycle? Is that what you're trying to say? Or is it that they took that news into effect? They also took into account from whom it came and what it said and what else was going on, and they still are avid Trump supporters or supporters enough to show up at a rally. He also brought up the idea that it was near capacity. I find that interesting in light of what the Fox affiliate in Orlando reported the day before the event.
Live from the news station, Fox 35 News at 5 starts now. Ready or not, Orlando, the political invasion is here.
And we wanted to make sure we got in the building since tens and tens of thousands of people are expected.
I'm very excited, and I want to be up front. I am called the Front Row Joe.
24 hours ahead of the president's re-election rally, supporters are lined up and protesters are setting up.
We are fed up. You haven't done what you have said to do for our community.
Our entire city in the national spotlight.
Trump has to win Florida again if he's going to win the White House.
Tonight, the news station with live team coverage. President Trump's campaign kickoff in O-Town.
The president promising a record-setting crowd, tweeting today there have been more than 100,000 requests for tickets.
We have a team of reporters covering every angle. Brian Scott working protests and security. Meteorologist Glenn Richards watching the skies.
But we kick things off with Robert Guadarrama live at the Amway Center tonight, where people have been lined up there since early this morning. Robert.
That's right, Charles Luan, and take a look. It is now pouring here where supporters have lined up outside the Amway Center. This is dedication, I can tell you. Everyone's pretty much soaked here, and with more than 24 hours to go, we're expecting the line out here to get longer and longer. Folks lining up since 5 a.m. Monday to witness President Trump kick off his 2020 re-election campaign in Orlando Tuesday evening. Trump tweeting 100,000 people have registered for tickets to the rally at the Amway Center, but the venue only holds 20,000. Ticketed supporters will be allowed in on a first-come, first-served basis.
We know that there's going to be a lot of people here, so we decided to get here early, and we're just really excited to hopefully get really close as possible we can get to Trump.
Supporters securing their spots in line with lawn chairs and tents. But Myra Galvez isn't planning to sleep outside.
We're going to glamp because we're at a hotel.
Her and her 4 sisters drove up from Miami, but got a hotel and are taking turns sitting in line. Galvez says the dedication will pay off when she sees Trump.
The whole experience, I hear it's fantastic.
Nathan Gunn is only 16, but he turns 18 just in time to vote in 2020. He's excited to hear the president's message.
Really, I hope to just experience this with all the people here and get to know more people and then basically hear what Trump has planned for 2020.
But these Trump fans are in for a rough 24 hours. Rain and heat in the forecast.
Especially our out-of-town visitors who are not familiar with the heat and humidity.
Orlando emergency responders expecting a busy day ahead.
In the event of an emergency, Orlando Fire Department will be on site. We'll have personnel, paramedics, firefighters inside the venue as well as outside the venue.
Supporters tell me they're in it for the long haul.
Rain or shine, we're going to stay here no matter what.
And boy, they are really putting their money where their mouth is right now, as you can see behind me. A lot of supporters out here, and again, they are soaked, but they aren't going anywhere, they tell me. Now, if those folks who don't make it into the arena tomorrow, there is a block party that's planned. It's called 45 Fest, and it is being held right behind us beyond that fence there across the street from the Amway Center. You can expect live music, food vendors, and they're setting up big screens to watch the rally live. So again, we'll have continuing coverage of Trump in Orlando here on Fox 35, reporting live at the Amway Center. I'm Robert Guadarrama, Fox 35 News.
So 100,000 ticket requests for an arena that holds 20,000, but Major Garrett reported that it was near capacity. That's kind of 5 times capacity. I'm sorry. And people were lining up more than a day in advance of Trump's. This wasn't a concert, people. Nobody was playing instruments. This wasn't a basketball game or a football game or a baseball. It wasn't a sporting event. And people are lining up. Wait a minute. 4 of you come up, rent a hotel room, and take turns standing in line to hold your spot. 16-year-old kid who can't even vote yet, should be able to vote by 2020, coming out on Monday. This is a teenager coming out on Monday and sitting in a line with a bunch of people waiting for an event that's going to happen more than 24 hours away. But Major Garrett said there was not as much enthusiasm. Seriously? Wow. Now, Mr. Garrett did not point out an oft-mentioned flaw in the appeal of Donald Trump, and that is, well, it's just old white guys coming out to listen to Donald Trump. Well, Al Jazeera English did a report on the day of the event, and they had some contradictory information on that point.
Some started lining up with the rain and heat more than a day in advance just to attend Donald Trump's official 2020 campaign kickoff. Most were exactly what you'd expect to find at a Trump rally, white, older, conservative voters. But there were a lot of exceptions, like Jessica Newberry.
I'm 100% Trump supporter, and yes, I'm a lesbian, and yes, I have biracial kids. Go Trump.
They love his policy because it's conducive to making money. You got other people who want to live off of us for free.
I think he's going to win Florida. I think he's going to win the presidency or get reelected for sure.
Black for Trump! Black for Trump!
Support between Democrats and Republicans is almost an even split in Florida. The state will be critical if Trump hopes to recapture the White House in 2020.
I stand before you to officially launch my campaign for a second term as President of the United States.
The campaign's efforts to register independent voters are more sophisticated than in 2016. He's also counting on his advantage as the incumbent.
We've really done it. We've rebuilt our military. It's still in the process. We've taken care of our vets. We've cut the hell out of regulations. You know, I've cut more regulations than any president in the history of our country, regardless of the length of their term.
But polls show worrying signs, like if the election were held today against former Democratic Vice President Joe Biden, Trump would lose. And despite a strong economy, Trump's approval rating is just 44%. Much of the country loathes his policies and continues to protest at his rallies.
That is a lot of fake news back there. That's a lot.
Trump is also under investigation by Democrats energized by their takeover of the House of Representatives last year. Still, among Trump supporters, none of that seems to matter.
Donald Trump is counting on supporter enthusiasm to build momentum, but campaigning costs money, and Election Day is still more than 16 months away. That's why Donald Trump is traveling to Miami for a high-dollar fundraiser. The minimum price of admission, $100,000. Kimberly Helkett, Al Jazeera, Orlando.
I find it interesting that Al Jazeera wants to emphasize that much of the country loathes his policies. Is there a president, has there ever been a president in your lifetime whose policies were not loathed by many people or much of the country? What does that have to do with anything? Did all of the country love Barack Obama's policy? Did they love Ronald Reagan's policies? Did they love George W. Bush's policies or George H.W. Bush's policies? Did they love Bill Clinton's policies? Especially his, well, extracurricular activity in the White House office policies. Really? Did everybody love Nixon's policies? It's a throwaway statement. It means nothing. But the one thing you did take from that is, wait a minute, I have homosexuals showing up for Trump. I have blacks chanting for Trump. And there weren't just a few, as the reporting indicated. So the idea that Donald Trump doesn't appeal to anyone but old white people is not true, never has been true, and continues to be untrue. Amazing. But what we are looking at here, which I find fascinating, and I do mean fascinating, is what we're going to see from the Democrats. And it's really only two things. It's just basically left and more left. Stuart Varney on Fox Business News nailed this all the way back in January.
A stream of Democrats lining up for the 2020 presidential election. They have two things in common: total resistance to the president and far-left policies. It seems contempt for Trump and socialism are at the heart of the Democrat campaign. California Senator Kamala Harris declared her candidacy on Monday. Other big names who include New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and likely declaring Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. There's no moderation amongst these three. Senator Harris has a $3 trillion tax plan. Gillibrand wants the wildly expensive Medicare for all. Senator Warren is all worked up about income inequality. None has any liking or respect for President Trump. In fact, open hostility to the president is a big plank in their platform. Former Housing Secretary Julian Castro, he's running. He's talked about 80% tax rates on the very rich. Democrat Andrew Yang, now he's a former tech executive. He's running on a universal income policy, $1,000 per month for all Americans. It's a very long list of those running, likely to run, or considering running, and not all of them are way out on the left. That is true. But it is the far left which has captured the imagination of the party and captured its attention too. 2 points. This left wing is putting Speaker Pelosi in the difficult position of keeping the government shut down, because keeping it going, the shutdown, keep it going, because they won't allow any negotiation with the hated president. And it also puts the Democrat Party in a difficult position in 2020. Will America go for a presidential candidate who champions massive new taxes and enormous increases in government spending? It's a debate we should encourage. We really don't want to repeat the socialist mistake.
So that's basically what you have. We hate Donald Trump, and we are somewhere to the left of Mao Zedong. We're just in a race to see how far left we can go. They are socialist policies. Socialist policies have never benefited America. We do have them. Social Security is socialist. Medicare is socialist. And in case you haven't been paying attention, and most people do not, if you think the national debt is a problem, remember that Social Security and Medicare have unfunded liabilities that dwarf the national debt. Many times the national debt. In other words, those plans are bankrupt, will be bankrupt, and before you ever get to the point where if you're looking to pay into it now that you expect to see those benefits, the country is likely to fall apart beforehand. Again, if you think the national debt's a problem, Social Security and Medicare dwarf that problem on a financial basis. Now, Varney, of course, did his report in January, which was before Joe Biden came in, who was supposed to be the moderate candidate, who's going to be the middle-of-the-road guy. He's going to stand his ground and represent all Democrats. Really? Well, you need to remember what was said not long after he got in by Jayapal, a congresswoman in, I think her name is Prima Jayapal, a congresswoman in Washington, D.C., about, well, what is the Democrat Party about?
I think the party's response is going to be strong, and hopefully you've seen that it's strong across the board. Personally, I do think that there should be a set of core Democratic ideals that we all agree to, and that you can't say you're a Democrat if you're against immigrants, if you're against abortion, if you're against gay marriage and LGBTQ rights. I'm not sure what it means to be a Democrat if all of those things are true.
So that's the litmus test. You have to be pro-immigrant, and that's illegal immigrant, by the way. If you're talking about Democrats, Democrats are pro-illegal immigration. I don't know of anyone who is anti-legal immigration. But Democrats are pro-illegal immigration, so let's be clear on that. Homosexual rights, same-sex marriage, abortion, oh, okay. So if that's what it means to be a Democrat, and you're Joe Biden, who has in the past been very vocal with regard to your support for the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits the use of federal funds in the performance of abortion. You don't use federal tax money to pay for abortion, except in cases where of rape, incest, or the woman's health is at risk. But Joe Biden wants to be a Democrat, so you can't be a moderate and be a Democrat anymore. And Joe Biden claims to be a Catholic. Well, EWTN, which is a Catholic broadcasting organization, actually took up the issue of his recent flip-flop, because he was in support of the Hyde Amendment. Now he's changed his mind, and he said all the nice flowery words, which basically mean, no, it's more important to me to be with these people than to agree with my faith.
Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. Pro-life Democrats say they're disappointed presidential candidate Joe Biden dropped his support of the pro-life Hyde Amendment. As we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the federal law bans taxpayer funding of abortion unless a pregnancy is a result of a rape or incest or is done to save the life of the mother. The former vice president says he reversed his stance as he was developing his upcoming comprehensive health care proposal. Biden says he can no longer support an amendment that makes it more difficult for some women to, quote, access health care. Joining me now with analysis is Michael New, associate scholar at the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and he's the visiting assistant professor at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America. Michael, welcome back to the broadcast.
Thanks for having me.
The former vice president says his decision to oppose the Hyde Amendment was not about health care, was about health care, but not about politics. Now, aside from the fact that the church doesn't consider abortion to be health care, I think you and I can agree a lot of this is likely about politics. So how do you think this will impact his candidacy?
Well, I think certainly it's political, and I think, frankly, this probably will help him as he tries to get the Democratic Party's nomination for president. Taking this position will insulate him from criticism from other Democrat candidates who are running for president, but I think it's going to hurt him in the general election. I think clearly, if you look at the polling data, most Americans oppose taxpayer funding of abortion. We had two polls come out during the summer of 2016. Over 55% oppose Medicaid coverage of abortion, and when it's awarded as taxpayer funding for abortion, opposition goes high as 60%. So I think that this may well help in the Democratic primaries, but it's certainly a losing issue for him in the general election should he be the Democratic Party's nominee.
When Biden initially expressed his support for the Hyde Amendment, he was constantly criticized, as you mentioned, by the other Democratic candidates. What do you think this signals from the Democratic Party in terms of Democrats who have pro-life views?
I think it kind of indicates there's really not much room for them in the Democratic Party. Right now we have over 20 Democrats running for president, and they're all pretty much saying the same thing on sanctity of life issues. They all support Roe v. Wade. They all oppose the Hyde Amendment. They seem to think that taxpayer dollars should fund elective abortions. So again, if you're a pro-life Democrat and you want to vote in the Democratic presidential primary, you really don't have any good options at this point, so far as I can see.
In your work at the Charlotte Lozier Institute, you've taken a closer look at the Hyde Amendment. So tell me a little bit more about it. What does your study find?
Sure. The Hyde Amendment places kind of limits on the ability of federal taxpayer dollars to fund abortion through the Medicaid program. And it's interesting. When you look at abortion policy, lots of things are debated. But when it comes to taxpayer funding of abortion, there's a lot of consensus. Most researchers, in fact, almost every researcher, whether they're pro-life or pro-choice, agrees you cut taxpayer funding for abortion numbers go down. Back in 2009, Guttmacher, which up until 2007 was Planned Parenthood's research arm, they did a comprehensive literature review of studies of taxpayer funding for abortion. A vast majority of the economics and public health studies find, again, you cut taxpayer funding for abortion rates go down. Center for Reproductive Rights did a study in 2010, found the same thing. And my Lozier study in 2016 on the 40th anniversary of the Hyde Amendment found that Hyde Amendment saved over 2 million lives since 1976. So there's really a strong consensus that this Hyde Amendment is a life-saving policy and one that deserves support.
And like I said, we encourage people to read more about the Hyde Amendment because there is so much information that people don't know. Michael New, associate scholar at the Charlotte Lozier Institute and visiting assistant professor at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America. Thanks so much for your analysis.
No, thanks for having me.
So let's back up here. That kind of ties into what we talked about in the prior segment. Abortion is their issue. And the thing is, listen to what you just heard. When you cut federal funds from abortion rates go down, which means fewer children are killed in the womb. Please explain to me why it's a bad thing. And please explain to me the whole idea that you want more funding for abortion from federal coffers so that more children will die, because that's what the research shows. Now, you know that Democrats are big on science and research, so they must know this. They must know that if you put more money, federal money, into abortion, more children will be killed. If that's not what they want, then why is this their position? So the campaign for president for 2020 is underway. It's underway because the guy who's most likely to win announced his campaign. We knew he was probably going to run anyway, but he announced his campaign. It wasn't started by the Democrats because the Democrats are basically one candidate with 24 personalities, or how many there are running right now. There is not a dime's worth of difference between any of them. And the fact that Joe Biden is leading the pack, someone who has twice failed before to win the nomination, a man who's a proven plagiarized, a guy who likes to grab and rub and sniff on any female that is not attached to him. And Joe Biden's an idiot. Joe Biden hadn't been right about anything in 4 decades. And this, not to mention, he's an old white guy. What happened to the party of diversity? That's, always talking about the problem with white folks in America, and we don't have enough youth, we don't have enough people of color, and you go out and get the oldest, whitest guy in the Democrat Party to represent you? Really? Wow. So it's really a matter of this. You have America on the side of Donald Trump. It's not Donald Trump's America. It's just the views that he has represent the views of most Americans. Or you have the Democrats who want to kill children, who want to spend money we do not have, bankrupt the country, and turn it over to illegal immigrants. That's your choice in 2020. The battle is now joined. Make your decision. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also on WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final reminder, last time I have to do this, we are moving from TalkAmericaRadio.us as our flagship to Mojo50.com as our flagship. That's the new place where you're going to be able to find Black Man Thinkin'. The other affiliates do not change. We will still be on WDDQ, WJHC, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB, but we are changing our flagship from TalkAmericaRadio.us to Mojo50Radio.com. We will put more information out on social media to make sure everybody knows what's going on. We will be starting an hour earlier. That's the primary change. We're going to start an hour earlier on the same day on Mondays. So let's get to this final segment of the week. What is it that blacks may lose by backing Trump? And this harkens back to an August 2016 campaign event that then candidate Trump held, where he asked a particular question and the answers were wide-ranging.
But first, our top story this morning. On the heels of another staff shakeup, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is facing a new backlash, this time for his attempt to get black voters to vote for him in the November election.
At a campaign rally near Lansing, Michigan on Friday, Trump asked what African Americans have to lose by voting for him. Errol Barnett is in Washington with more on that. Errol, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, it was supposed to be a day for a clean slate, but Trump's latest attempted outreach to a larger voting bloc is already being called ignorant and heavy-handed by his critics.
Look how much African-American communities have suffered under Democratic control. To those I say the following: what do you have to lose?
Speaking from a predominantly white suburb in Michigan, Donald Trump tried to increase his support from African-American voters, which, according to a recent Pew survey, favor Hillary Clinton over the Republican nominee by an 83-point margin.
You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
Moments after the speech, Hillary Clinton responded with a tweet, quote, "This is so ignorant, it's staggering." The pitch came on the same day as the resignation of Trump's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. Manafort is currently embroiled in a scandal involving possible illegal payments from a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine.
He has to be interrogated. He has to be under investigation.
An investigation by Ukrainian anti-corruption campaigner Sergei Lushenko shows almost $13 million of off-the-book payments listed for Manafort during his time working for Ukraine's pro-Russian president.
Is he guilty or not? This is, of course, up to American judges and up to American judicial system.
Meanwhile, for Clinton, her legal troubles are not over yet. On Friday, a U.S. District Court judge granted a request by Judicial Watch that requires Clinton to provide written answers under oath to questions related to her email scandal. Now get this, the group's questions have to be submitted by October 14th, and Clinton will have 30 days to respond. That means those answers may not be revealed until after the election. Elaine?
Errol Barnett in Washington. Errol, thank you.
You don't have jobs. Your schools stink. You're not safe in your neighborhoods. Your young people are unemployed. What do you have to lose by voting for Donald Trump? Somehow that's seen as ignorant. Now, I'm sorry. I can't see it that way, because black people have been voting for Democrats for, oh my gosh, since before I was born. They vote for Democrats. And even Malcolm Little, also known as Malcolm X, called them out, calling them political chumps and traitors to their race for their support of Democrats when the result was nothing. And it continues to be nothing. It's still nothing. So Donald Trump came in and said, based on where you are right now, because the question is, do you really think it can get worse if you vote for me versus voting for Hillary Clinton? You know, the woman who calls you super predator, the woman whose husband signed the 1994 crime bill that is credited, if you want to call it that, with the big rise in mass incarceration. So you think that you're going to do worse under Donald Trump than you would under Hillary Clinton? And Hillary Clinton is Secretary of State for Barack Obama, who kept your behinds unemployed for the better part of 8 years. The answer, of course, you see, this is the interesting thing about Trump and the genius in some ways, in my opinion, regarding Trump. When other people are looking to dance around or pussyfoot around something and try to, well, you know, we got to take a particular line, Donald Trump, instead of tiptoeing, he just jumps in with both feet, makes a splash, and then says, now what are we going to do? To be honest with you, when I first heard that, I was inspired because somebody finally put the question out there to the national media, to and through the national media. Look, your support of Democrats has you living scared. Do you realize that black folks are scared more than anything else of black people? They talk about white people, but they don't have burglar bars up on their businesses and homes to keep white people out of their homes and businesses. That's not what's going on. They are afraid of black people. And that's what supporting Democrats has done. And if that's the case, where someone is talking about the possibility of changing what's going on in your community, which means you may not have to be afraid of black people anymore. Because you talk crap about white folks. You're not studying white folks. You ain't afraid of them. You know, please. In October, 2 months after that August campaign stop, October, the month before the election, Donald Trump, I guess you could say, went into a little bit more detail. Bloomberg got this report in October 2016.
Today I want to talk about how to grow the African American middle class and to provide a new deal for black America. That deal is grounded in 3 promises: safe communities, great education, and high-paying jobs. My vision rests on a principle that has defined this campaign right from the beginning, and you've seen where we've come from and where we are right now. It's called America First. Every African American citizen in this country is entitled to a government that puts their jobs, wages, and security first. One of the greatest betrayals has been the issue of immigration. Illegal immigration violates the civil rights of African Americans. That's what's been happening. No group has been more economically harmed by decades of illegal immigration than low-income African American workers. I will also propose tax holidays for inner-city investment, a new tax incentive to get foreign companies to relocate in blighted American neighborhoods, and they will do that. It will be worthwhile. It's called incentive. They will do it. I am very humbled beyond words to be the nominee of the party of Abraham Lincoln. A lot of people don't know that. It's the party of Abraham Lincoln. And it is my highest and greatest hope that the Republican Party can be the home in the future and forevermore for African Americans and the African American vote, because I will produce and I will get others to produce, and we know for a fact it doesn't work with the Democrats, and it certainly isn't going to work with Hillary.
The thing that he said, it doesn't work with the Democrats. How do you know it doesn't work with the Democrats? Black folks have been voting for Democrats since the 1960s and before. Please explain to me how it has made their community safer, their schools better, and given them higher paying jobs. It has not. It is a bold truth statement. It's inartfully stated. Donald Trump is not necessarily the most talented orator who's ever lived. Who cares? I don't vote for presidents because I like the way they sound when they talk to me. I vote for elected officials, including presidents, because of what I think they might be able to do that benefits me. I know who Hillary Clinton is. I know who Barack Obama is. It horrified me that any person, no matter their color, would vote for either of those clowns thinking that it was of benefit to America or Americans. Donald Trump simply called it out. So, 3 things he said: higher paying jobs, safe schools, safe neighborhoods, and great schools. Safety, education, income. Can anybody tell me how that would be bad for black Americans or any Americans? See, this is the interesting thing. Donald Trump made the pitch to black Americans, but there is no such thing as a pitch to black Americans that doesn't benefit all Americans, because it's the same thing that everybody else wants. I want to be safe when I go to my home. I want my schools, the schools that I pay for, particularly the public schools, I'm paying for them, and I send my kids there. I want those schools to be great. I want them to get great education, and I want to be able to make enough money, and for my children, when they get into the workforce, to make enough money, increasing amounts of money, so they can take care of their families as well. Can you name a community that doesn't want that in America? Tell me the community that wants unsafe neighborhoods, terrible schools, and poor income. But that's exactly what the black community has had under the Democrats. And remarkably, black people keep voting for Democrats. It's astonishing. It truly is astonishing. Nevertheless, after the election, which Donald Trump was not supposed to win, and after making statements like that and being bold, and of course he did not win the black vote, but here's the dirty little secret. Nobody needs the black vote to win a national election. There are not enough black folks. There's 13. Only 1 in every 8 Americans is considered black. Please explain to me how that's going to sway the election. Now, Malcolm X had his theory. He said, well, he thought the whites were evenly divided, and therefore wherever the black vote goes, that's going to make the difference. Well, see, here's the problem. When the whites are not evenly divided, the black vote doesn't matter. They weren't evenly divided in 2016. They're not necessarily going to be evenly divided in 2018, simply because the result of the 2016 election has led to a better country. We're not at war. Our economy is the best it's been in decades. We have had more job openings than people looking for jobs for months. Hello? And freedoms are coming back. Freedoms for people who happen to be heterosexual, who happen to be Christian. Those things are coming back because they are no less entitled to freedom, and their freedom should be no less protected than those who oppose them. For that reason, or for those reasons, white America is not necessarily divided on Trump. I know what the polls say, but you remember the same polls had Donald Trump losing an electoral landslide, and he ended up with more than 300 electoral votes. Hello. The Clown Brown Caucus, also known as the Congressional Black Caucus, I call them the Clown Brown Caucus because that's what they are. They're clowns. They don't accomplish anything. The only thing they accomplish is they are the best paid welfare recipients, public assistance recipients in America. They are accountable for nothing. They do nothing. They dress well because they make $174,000 a year. Not that many other people on public assistance do that. And they hang around D.C. and all they got to do is spout Al Sharptonisms, and they can get reelected and continue to do nothing. Well, we're finally having reparations discussions. That ain't going nowhere. And any black person who actually wants some white person who did them no harm to pay them money for a wrong that they did not endure has no self-respect. You have no dignity. But you do you. If a white person came up to me, and I'm black, born black, been black, will die black, and in between those dates, going to stay black. If any white person came up to me and started talking to me about reparations for slavery, I'm gonna break a foot off in their behind. I'm insulted. You didn't own a slave. I've never been a slave. And everybody who's involved in that has been dead. Well, but you were born at a time when there was segregation. Okay, so tell that to my Air Force career. Tell that to the 2 college degrees I have. Tell that to the multiple professional certifications I have. Say all that and tell me how all that has kept me from being, quote unquote, all I wanted to be. It hasn't. And there's nothing you're going to do to change what's been going on with me. Not going to happen. Back to the Clown Brown Caucus. They decided to go talk to Donald Trump after saying they originally might boycott his inauguration. And in March of 2017, they went in and came out with this result.
We wanted to answer for him the question of what do we have to lose? And part of it is going into details about the budget that was proposed, the skinny budget, that would be very devastating to the African American community and uplifting rural and urban areas all around this country. And it was a meeting that was more of a business meeting. We presented to him our policy document, which is titled, What Do We Have to Lose?, which encompasses both problems as we see it and solutions that we offer as subject matter experts in the area. President Trump has met with various African Americans. However, we're the only African Americans that are elected to the United States Congress that develop policy and can offer a different viewpoint. Of course, there were some areas, many areas, where we disagreed with the policy or solutions prescribed by his budget and his policies. But I will tell you that it was a meeting where both sides listened, and it was a meeting where we were very candid about disagreements. But the surprising part was that when we talked about the goals, there were more similar than there were differences. The route to get there, I think, was where you may see differences, and part of that is just education and life experiences. So I will close with this. The president suggested and was willing to have further engagement on a consistent basis, and he offered up, we requested, and he offered up his cabinet secretary so we could go more in depth on the policy solutions that we suggested. And the truth is we look forward to meeting with some of the cabinet secretaries to give them that experience that we have to see if we can't come to reach some of those same goals that were articulated in the White House.
Here's the only thing that I took from that. The Clown Brown Caucus, who does nothing for black people, sat down with Donald Trump about goals for black people and found out they had the same goals. The Clown Brown Caucus that does nothing for black people said the difference between them was not the aims but the approaches. And we know that the approach that has been championed by the Clown Brown Caucus for decades has never resulted in anything of benefit to black people. It has not given them safer communities. It has not given them better schools. It has not increased their employment or their income. So again, what the heck did you have to lose? And since Donald Trump has been president, the economic future, the economic outlook for black people has improved. Do you know what the most impressive thing about reducing unemployment and increasing wages for black people is? Here's the most impressive thing about it. It means I don't necessarily need the government to do anything. Because if I give black people if I help black people achieve safer communities, better schools, better employment and better income, I think they, just like anybody else in America, can handle the rest of it on their own without the government. That's what scares the Clown Brown Caucus. That's what scares the Democrat Party. That's what scares progressives in America. Doesn't scare me. Of course, I'm none of the above. Blacks lose nothing by backing Trump. They will simply continue to lose by listening to those who are against him. And that's our show. May God bless and keep you is our prayer. Next week, Black Man Thinking on Mojo 50 Radio. Look forward to seeing you there. Take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.